Welcome to Beyond Recovery, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Gardner, and I have another host on the show today. His name is Kris, and he is one of the co-hosts of the fantastic recovery sobriety podcast, Recovery Elevator. Kris, how are you today?
I'm doing really well, Matt. Thank you. And thanks for hyping up RE, man.
Oh,
Appreciate
man,
it.
love it. I love it. Huge inspiration for me. As you know, we talked about, I felt very fortunate to be a part of the show, the Recovery, RE, Recovery Elevator, coming out. My episode will be dropping fairly soon here, later June. So thanks again for having me on. And I really appreciate you coming on. I was half expecting you to, I don't know, call it perception is like a big league me or whatever it may be. But honestly, dude, I had a great conversation with you, and I really appreciate you coming on and kind of flipping the script on you and get you, allowing you to tell your story as well.
Yeah. Well, one, thank you for coming on our show and for being a listener. We appreciate that. And, as you and I talked about when we visited for Recovery Elevator, a huge part of recovery, I think, is having the opportunity to hear our story through somebody else's. So I feel like I talk about me a lot, but to have the chance, maybe there's somebody out there who's a member of your audience who maybe has similar experiences to what I had or am having. And I think just knowing that there's other people out there who have gotten through it gives us strength and hope and any chance to share, I think is worth it. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we definitely did discuss that, in when you and I were talking before, just how important it is to, and how, how important it is, how like mood changing it can be to hear something that somebody else has gone through similar to you. And it's almost like you can have this moment of connection, and there's this release that comes from it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. So let's get into your story, man. Like what were sort of your origins with alcohol, with drinking, some context as far as, does it run in your family? Was it sort of a part of your community growing up, that kind of thing?
Okay. Yeah, man. I grew up in a little town called Williston, North Dakota. It's the northwestern part of the state. It's relatively small towns, like 13,000 people growing up. And my parents weren't really drinkers. I could probably count on one hand how many times I saw my parents drunk between, as far as I can remember back till when I left home. They would have a beer every once in a while, but it wasn't really part of their life. It wasn't, not for any particular reason other than I think they were just too busy working, and we were broke. We were completely broke growing up. But interesting childhood. I don't know if it's really that interesting, but like I said, I grew up in a pretty poor family, and my parents were always working. My dad wasn't around a lot, not because he was off doing crazy stuff, but the guy was just trying to pay bills. My mom was overwhelmed paying bills and trying to take care of a couple kids. It was just, I had one brother who has since passed, but we were just wilding out kids. We were pretty feral growing up out in the country, and my folks, they loved us. I know that they loved us. They had their own tough childhoods, and some of that kind of got brought into our house. They were stern, but I think they did the best they could. But yeah, there was, it was tough. They were strict, and they were tough on us. And from an early age, I feel like I was kind of performative, just to try to be the right type of person so that I wouldn't get in trouble. What can I say? What can I do to get out of certain situations, to not get in trouble? How can I be the type of person that they want me to be? And again, like they love, there's no doubt in my mind that they did and still do love us with all their heart, but that was just kind of the dynamic. And it was the same way. We went to school in town, but we lived in the country. So I never really knew who I was. I felt uncomfortable in myself. We were always like the poor kids or hand-me-downs, and I would do anything in school to try to fit in, to include, acting like a total jackass around like the kids that I thought were cool or that I wanted to be a part of their gang or their clique. I would do whatever I could. I would take abuse. I'd let people make fun of me just because I wanted to fit in. And again, it's just that it doesn't really matter who you are, be who you need to be to fit in and just to try to survive. Um, so anyway, fast forwarding, that was kind of like the MO for me, is just perform, be who you need to be.
Right.
Around, it would have been like my senior year in high school, as a young kid, maybe I tasted a sip of beer here and there, but nothing major. My senior year in high school, I had two groups of friends, and one group of friends started to experiment with alcohol, and just out of curiosity, I was like, let me give this thing a shot. And we snuck into a hotel room. Or no, we were ice fishing. This is a true North Dakota story. We were ice fishing the first time. and we got drunk. It was nothing real crazy. I think we just had a bunch of light beers, and we got drunk and acted silly and goofy. But man, I freaking loved it. I loved it so much, man. I just liked how it felt. It loosened me up. I felt like I could be myself. All this kind of anxiety of who do I need to be started to slip away. And
Right.
I've heard some old AA speakers say, either you're born with it or you drink yourself into it. And I think I'm one of those people that I just kind of come by it naturally, because from that first time, I loved it and I wanted to do it more. And that my senior year of high school, I would hang out with that group of friends that I drank with, and my other group of friends were concerned. And even from within my first 12 months of drinking, there was already people who were concerned, like, Kris, what are you doing? Like, okay, you tried it, you went out, you got a little drunk, but like, why are you planning on doing this again? Like, why do you need to do this? And even at that young age, I would kind of like dismiss them and write them off. And it's like, oh, what's their problem? Why are they being so judgmental? Why are they being critical? Don't they know that I'm just trying to have a good time? But like, even they could see, hey, bro, maybe you're a little out of control with this. And like, nothing big was happening per se. I mean, we were just getting drunk and being stupid. And if there is a way to do it responsibly as a high schooler, I guess we were doing that. But I like that freedom. I had spent so much of my life worrying about how I was acting and how I felt being around other people, that to have that anxiety just kind of disappear as a result of alcohol. Like, it's like, this thing is amazing. Why isn't everybody doing this all the time? So that was high school. I joined military. I joined the Air Force shortly after I graduated. The first year or so was a lot of training. Didn't really drink much then. When I got to my first duty station, that first year and a half, I mean, we would party every once in a while, but you're on base. You're worried about getting in trouble. So it wasn't too wild. But about a year and a half or 2 years into that first duty station, I was notified that I was going to be going to Korea for a year. And my now wife and I were long distance dating. She was going to college, and I was stationed out on the West Coast, and she was really upset that I was going to go to Korea. She was like bummed. It's a year tour, and she's like, I can't believe you're going to go. And she didn't want to talk about it. I did want to talk about it. It created some friction in the relationship. And that was one of there was a shift in my alcohol use there. Like, all the social drinking that I had done up until then, like I absolutely was using alcohol for kind of that social lubricant. But this was a little different. There was a problem in my life, and I had anxiety as a result of, kind of this tumultuous spot in our relationship. And it was fixing that too, like, doing some air quotes here, fixing it.
Right.
Basically making me not think about it. But I said, like, there was an escalation in my use and frequency, and then how much I was drinking, which started to cause problems in my relationship. And when I got to Korea, I was there in 2004 to 2005. And that was a pretty wild time too. That was like old school military, where we worked really hard and we partied really hard too. And I wasted that year. It bums me out looking back on it. I wasted that year drinking. And I mean, there's so many times where I should have gotten in trouble, where I was like, we were just doing really stupid shit. And that whole time, like, my wife at one point was ready to call off our engagement. Like, she was she was sick of my crap because I'd call her, we'd get done partying and she would be getting up for school because of the time difference. And I'd call her and I was just an ass. I was just a giant ass. And then, of course, all this is creating anxiety. Let's drink to subside, help kind of subside that anxiety and more problems. We survived, our relationship survived barely my year over there. Come back to the States, we get married, move to South Carolina. In that time that we were in South Carolina, we had our first daughter in 2006, also in 2006, for like the 6 months up to, my wife got pregnant before I went to Iraq. So it's good that she didn't get pregnant while I was over there. That could be an issue. But yeah,
good point.
She got pregnant before I went to Iraq. When I came home, I got home like 2 weeks before my daughter was born.
Wow.
And it was just kind of more of the same. Like that was a rough experience. I didn't know how to talk about stuff. I never really felt safe talking about how I was feeling things. And basically I kept building more and more reasons to drink. There's just more and more, quote unquote, like valid reasons to drink. I spent a year overseas in Korea. I was in Iraq for 6 months, saw some terrible shit. I'm in the military. I'm young. I just like to party. That's not a problem. I get out of the service. That was another transition that was really hard. In the military, you know who you are. Your rank is on your sleeve. I got out. The economy sucked. I felt like I had this lost identity. Another point where my drinking escalated again. Took a couple years. Finally, I got a job offer up in North Dakota. So we moved back up to North Dakota. I've got an amazing job now. But now it was a different reason. Like, I'm king shit. I'm making so much money. I've got this amazing job. I'm getting good reviews. You can't freaking touch me. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I'm volunteer search and rescue. I'm an American veteran. I've been to the war. I've been overseas. I'm all these things. I've got this resume. You don't freaking touch my drinking. Don't try to touch my drinking. And every step of the way, again, like my frequency, how often I'm drinking, and the volume it keeps increasing. And my wife she's obviously noticing it, and it's creating this divide because I'm just doing more and more stupid shit. I'm spending more money on alcohol as my ego is continuing to get inflated. One, as a result of like who I am and my career and my stature in the community. I've got inflated ego because of that. And partially this ego is so inflated because I've got to be ready to defend myself in case anybody approaches me about my drinking. I've got to be able to say, well, listen, don't you know who I am? But yeah, like as that's happening, like financially, I'm just making a lot of like really terrible decisions. Like I'm spending money out of our checking account that doesn't need to be spent on booze. I've got a separate checking account that she found out about later that had, I think at the peak of it was like $700 a month that was being used like, oh, this is for hobbies and vacations. It was for booze. It was all booze. I start to, I'm drinking and driving here and there. I'd say that pretty casually. I was drinking and driving a lot. In the last year, it got much worse, but even up until that last year, it was way, like once is way more than it should be, but drinking and driving, like I've got a shift work schedule. So, Tuesday, Wednesdays I'm off during the week quite often. So I'd like go pick up the kids and she would just have this like idea, like, has he been drinking? And she'd like call me on it. And I would get aggressive and, really I was emotionally abusing her and verbally assaulting her just to defend, because how dare you question me? Things were getting rough. She was throwing out some ultimatums here and there, like, hey, you need to slow down. You need to do something. Maybe you need to get some help. And throughout the course of my life, I hadn't had a lot of experiences in life where I felt safe asking for help. And just the idea that I couldn't handle this thing on my own, it made me feel really weak. I didn't feel like I was a man, a man. I'm a veteran. I'm a volunteer. Like I said, I've got this resume of like who I am. And if I can't handle drinking, then like what the hell does that say about me? Um, so yeah, I was real belligerent whenever that would come up. Um, but yeah, things were not good. On the surface, again, Kris has this resume. My wife is a teacher. When we would interact with people in public, we'd be at a party and like, yeah, I'd get drunk and have a good time. And it looked normal. It's just like, oh, Kris is like, I was a fun drunk at the party. I'd come home and I'd be a dick because
Mm.
that's when either I would be confronted and just get really aggressive, or I would just turn into a recluse and go hide away and drink the way that I wanted to. And she, Amy would wake up, and on just a random weekday morning, she got to the point where she was like setting her alarm before the kids would get up because she wanted to make sure she could clear away any empties that I might have.
Mm.
It wasn't uncommon for her at 6 a.m. to be clearing 20 empties because I passed out before I got a chance to throw things away. Or she would like, if she was going to pick someone up in my truck, she'd have to like check it out to make sure I didn't have like a case of empties in the back seat because I was drinking and driving on the way home from work or out to the lake. Um, anyway, winding down to that last year, December of 2016. Like I said, I've just got one brother. And in December of 2016, I'm working a night shift at work, and I get a call that my brother's in the hospital. They thought he had a stroke. They don't really know what's going on, a stroke or heart attack. They're not sure. And they're like, he's on his way to the hospital. And I'm just like, shit. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on with him? And I'm just like praying, trying to figure out what to do. And he went in for surgery. They figured out that he had a jacked up valve, but he was going in for surgery. He was going to be there all night. So as soon as I got off work, I drove home, and my wife drove me down to Bismarck, and he made it out of surgery, got settled into the ICU, and his surgery must have been like 8 hours. It was forever. But by the time they got him into ICU, he went back into arrest, and they were trying to resuscitate him. And it was me and my mom and my dad and my brother's wife, and we're standing out there while they're doing like CPR on him. I think they were maybe getting ready to hook up paddles. I can't, it's kind of a blur, but they were trying to resuscitate him. And the doc comes out and he's like, you guys, he's fought really hard, but we it's up to you. We'll do whatever you want, but we think maybe he might be ready to go. And we kind of looked at each other and we're like, it's okay. Like, call it, I guess. It's just like a really fucked up thing to
Mhm.
have to like say or think. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Um, yeah. And my brother and I, we were close. I mean, we were a year and a half apart. We lived in the country. Like, we were each other's best friends and worst enemies our entire childhood. We hated each other, but we loved each other. And like I said,
Mm.
it wasn't a bad childhood, but it was tough. And like, he was that guy where if I ever needed to work through something, like he just knew. Like, he just knew. He was my brother.
Yeah.
He knew what life was like for me. I knew what life was like for him.
Mm.
And even if we weren't like super, super close, like there's just that bond,
Yeah.
we spent 18 years together. So yeah, he passed away. And when we were planning the funeral, I just went right into planning mode. I compartmentalized any grief that I was having. I remember being at the funeral home, and my parents were like talking about memories about, oh man, Andy loved this song. And oh, what about that? And I was like, hey, come on, guys, we got to get this taken care of. Like, let's
Mm.
go. And anybody who was in the room could tell that I had just removed any emotion from it. I mean, of course I was getting ripped apart, but like, I couldn't, man, I couldn't spend time with that feeling because it hurt too much. And that poured just a barrel of gas on the dumpster fire that kind of was my life.
Mm.
And that next 9 months was a total shit show. I remember um, he lived about an hour from us. We live in a small town. He lives in a bigger town in North Dakota, about an hour away. So as we were doing funeral prep and stuff, I was just staying down in a hotel down there. And I think it was the day before the funeral. My wife came down and she's like, I'm going to be down at like 6 a.m. As soon as I wake up, me and the kids are coming down. And the night before, I think I had stayed up until like 5 o'clock in the morning drinking. And I didn't bother to clean anything up, nothing. And she comes and she like knocks on the hotel room door and I open it up and I'm still, yeah, I was still drunk. I wasn't hungover. I didn't have time to be hungover yet. I'm still drunk. And I open the door and I just walk back and lay down in the bed and she looks and there's like cases of beer because I've been there for a couple days and she's just like, really, Kris? And I just looked at her. I'm like, my brother just died. What the fuck? Like, what are you going to do? Do you want to deal with this? You want to take my place? And she's like, which is messed up. And I did that. I used that. That's probably one of the things that grosses me out the most about my drinking, along with like just the way I treated my wife and my children. But the fact that I used my brother's death as like this thing in my tool belt where if I'm ever getting judged, if she's ever getting a little sick of my drinking, I can just throw this out there like, hey, I've got this trauma. Like, how are you're going to tell me how to deal with this? Both of your brothers are alive. Yeah, it was pretty gross, but I would do anything because that alcohol just made me feel normal. I was so freaking addicted and it had gotten to the point where I had used it along the way. All these problems that I had in my life, I was always using alcohol. So it was the only thing I knew. I didn't really know how to deal with anything. I didn't know how to cope in any sort of a healthy way. So I was going to protect that by any means necessary. And if that meant like throwing this out there, hey, this horrible thing just happened. This is what I need to do to deal with it. That's what I would do. And it worked until the following summer, the summer of 2017. And she was just getting sick. She was getting so sick of my shit. And it's not like she was just being a pain in the ass, but I had changed. I wasn't the person that she had married, and she loved me and she just wanted that man back. But I was a shell of that man. All I was concerned about was my drinking. And that last 9 months after my brother passed until I sobered up was really dark. I didn't want anything to do with her. I didn't really want anything to do with the kids. I was always isolating. My drinking was becoming more reckless. I didn't really care. As I was driving to work, I've got this rural commute, 35-mile commute to work. And there was times where I'm like, man, I just want a semi or a piece of farm equipment to cross the center road because like I want to be dead before the rest of the world figures out what a piece of shit I am. And I just felt like it was a matter of time before I was exposed. Like I could start to feel that I really am an ugly person right now. And I've got, like I said, I've said it a couple times, I've got this resume of who I am. And it's like, man, that can only last through so much. And there's going to be a point where people are going to figure out this guy's not who he says he is. He's someone else. And there's this dark, nasty side of him. And I was scared of that to be exposed. So I was just secretly hoping that, I don't know, maybe luck will have its way with me and just take me out before everybody figures out. There was a little bit of like suicidal ideation and stuff, but never any plan or anything like that. But maybe just a matter of time. It's hard to say. But over that next few months, my wife's language was starting to shift. She was becoming more and more concerned for her safety and for the safety of the kids. I was really aggressive. I was like imposing on her. Like I wasn't putting hands on her, but like I'm a 6'7" dude. She's a normal human. And I was like in her face with her up against the wall screaming at her. So what's the difference? Like I was kind of a piece of shit husband and I was yelling at my kids. I was driving drunk with everybody. And I could just tell there was a shift. Like she was getting sick of it. And kind of the last straw with her. We went on a vacation, a family vacation. My kids took off early with my in-laws to South Dakota, and my wife and I came later, and I was drunk when I drove her down there. It was like a 5-hour drive. I was drunk when I drove her down there. And she told me, she's like, I don't want you to drink this whole week. And I was like, oh, whatever, that's fine. Like, that's stupid. She emailed her whole family, said, Kris isn't going to be drinking. Don't give him a hard time. Don't pressure him. And I was pissed, but I'm like, well, whatever. I cannot drink for a week. And I was like, I'll show you. I didn't last a day, man. I was sneaking beer. I was finding reasons. We had this cabin out in the woods rented. I was finding reasons like, I got to run to town to check on the humidity at the bank thing. It's just stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And sneaking beers. And it's not like I wasn't drinking for fun. I hated it. I wasn't having a good time, but it was just like, I had this thing in the back of my head that whole week that we were down there, like, something's going to give. She's not going to put up with this for much longer. Like, I could just tell she was kind of over me. And I'm like, what am I going to say? And that whole week, I'm like, what am I going to say when she confronts me? Because it's just a matter of time. Do I go get help? Do I go to like a meeting? Do I go to treatment? I don't know. I don't really know. What do I do? And sure as shit, the day we got home, she had some stuff to do at the house. The kids and I went out to the lake, and after she finished her stuff at the lake, I started drinking. I'm like, all right, I got maybe hour, 2 hours before she's out here. Let me start drinking just to get right, you know? And she shows up and she sends the kids off to the park, and her and I are sitting in the camper, and she's like, I know you drank on the vacation. And I was like, oh, I didn't even do anything though. Like, I didn't bother anybody. What difference does it make? She's like, well, I asked you not to, and you did. She's like, I don't want you to drink anymore. And in that moment, I'm like, all right, like, here's your choice, Kris. Like, what are you going to do? And I looked at her, and I was scared of losing the thing that I knew could make me all right. And I looked at her and I said, fuck you. Tell me who your attorney is. You've changed, not me. And she had turned to her faith. And I was like, where's your God now? Do you think he can fix me? Where's your God now? And it just gutted her. And she left, and she left the kids with me out at the lake, surprisingly. And we had a camper out there. And that night they're like, where's mom? And I was like, she went to town. She had some stuff to do. And that night the kids, for whatever reason, like, Dad, can we sleep up in your bed? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, what have you done? Like, what have you done that you want to give this up? You know, you're going to be on scheduled time with your kids. Like, what are you thinking? Over the next few months, she had no reason to believe that I was going to change. I did sign up for treatment and I went to it, but she had no reason to believe. I mean, she'd had 15 years of me lying, doing anything to survive. So she actually filed for divorce, and it broke her heart, but she thought that that's what she had to do to protect herself and our children. And I went to treatment. I drank for another 3 weeks after that night, but I went to treatment. And in conjunction with treatment was the best thing I ever did, man. I loved it. In conjunction with that, I started meeting with our pastor. And my first meeting with the pastor, he's like, well, Kris, what's going on? And he kind of had an idea because Amy had been talking to him a little bit. And he's like, well, all right, you're going to try to straighten things out. So this is good. He's like, what's your relationship like with God? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know if he's exists or if I'm pissed at him. Like, I don't know, man. And he's like, what's your prayer life like? And I was like, I don't speak Old English. I don't know how to pray. You know, I've got this jaded perception of God because of all this thing that has happened to me. Supposedly it's nothing happened to me. This is just life. But he challenged me to get into the word and start reading the Bible to learn who God says he is, not who I think he is or who other people have told me, but who does he say that he is? And he challenged me to start praying. And that's when there started to be a shift. You know, I think treatment, I did an outpatient program. Treatment helped me to kind of learn how to live sober. It introduced me to the recovery sort of lifestyle. It was a 12-step style, 12-step influence treatment center. But that getting into the word and like redeveloping a connection with God, um, that kind of showed me how to be a person, like the person that I wanted to be. When I got that connection back with source, I felt a peace like I had never known before. And what that looked like for me, I felt weird, but what that looked like for me was in the mornings, I would ask him to help me get through the day. I'd ask him to help me make the right decisions. I'd ask him to just show me what I'm supposed to do. In the evenings, I would thank him for the day and apologize, and ask for guidance if I felt like I screwed something up. And then over the course of the day, whenever I was met with a struggle or a conflict, I would just pause and like count. Like, this is a thing I used to do, is like I'd pause and count my teeth.
Mm,
Like, I'd put my tongue on my teeth because I was a very reactionary, impulsive, aggressive guy. But I would stop and like count my teeth with my tongue before I would respond to anything, especially because my wife and
interesting.
we were going through like this divorce thing. We're not divorced now. Like, luckily it didn't happen. But in the meantime, like all this like custody, it was ugly. It was really ugly. And I would just like count my teeth to give me a chance to breathe. And I'd be like, all right, God, show me how to not hurt this woman. Show me what the next right thing is. I need help because I don't know, because my instincts are wrong. And and I can't explain it. There was never this beam of light that shone down. There's never necessarily an audible voice, but there's something about submitting to something bigger than me and
Mm,
saying, please just show me that. um, my wife doesn't like this this description, but I was like, it's almost like a Jiminy Cricket. And I think
aha. Yeah.
I'm a Christian. I don't know if this will weird anybody out, but I believe that's the Holy Spirit working in me, is like this Jiminy Cricket sort of, your consciousness, like, hey, this is what you need to do. This is
Mm,
what you need to say. And the more that I leaned into him, looking for direction in my life, uh, things didn't straighten out right away. Our marriage didn't poof suddenly get better, but I was at peace even during those really hard times. And it gave me time to slow down, and it gave her time to slow down. And she could be like, wait a minute, when I say something to him that should really piss him off, like, he's not triggered the way that he once was triggered. And she started to notice, and she's like, there's something different about this guy. And eventually she recognized it. She saw the change. I quit talking about it, started living it. And then she believed it. Then she saw it. And she's like, I don't know if it's too late, but can we reconcile? And it was a long road. It was still another 4 or 5 months before I moved home. I think we were separated for 6 or 7 months total, nearly divorced. Um, but yeah, we did a lot of counseling and figured out how to have conversations, how to treat each other, how to ask for what we needed, and how to serve the other person, and uh, how to both give 100 in a relationship instead of like waiting for them to do their part. And we still screw up, but uh, yeah, we separated in July of 17, and I moved back home in January of 18. So uh yeah, in the meantime, other things I did, like I said, I did that outpatient treatment, which was amazing. It was a kind of this influx of recovery, and I figured out like what addiction was. They talked a lot about the science. That was my first exposure to like group therapy,
mm,
being in a space where other people are talking about what their problems are. Learned about the science of addiction, learned that that it's not just me as a bad person. Like, hey, there's reasons, there's things happening in your brain that cause this addiction. You're still responsible for it, but
mm.
it's not your fault. And there's another way. um so that was amazing. In the meantime, as I was commuting, my treatment was 3 days a week, 3 hours a night. It was 3 hours a night, 3 nights a week, and it was a 75-mile commute each way. So it was kind of an investment. And I spent a lot of time in the vehicle, and I got sick of listening to like Howard Stern on satellite radio. So I
Yeah.
started looking up recovery podcasts, and I came across Recovery Elevator. And treatment, like group therapy and treatment was good, but we were all kind of at the same place. We were all kind of like wet babies in recovery, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what in the hell are we supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when I started to listen to Recovery Elevator, um, I heard myself and other people's stories. And
Mhm.
kind of the difference was, is there were some people that had some time. And it didn't have to be 10 years or 20 years. I mean, sometimes maybe it was 100 days. And to me, that was a huge deal. And I still think 100 days is a huge deal. One day is a huge deal because we live in a tough world.
Hell yeah.
But hearing other people talk about how they had gotten through things like I was deathly afraid of going through, I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of hope. Um, and then through listening to the podcast, I live in a rural area. There's a little bit of local 12 step. It's not real strong. Um, and I was real concerned about having community because that was one of the things I loved about treatment. I loved like showing up and hanging out with my people. So um, I joined an online community, Café RE, which is kind of an offshoot of Recovery Elevator. And that's where that's where I met my people, man. I've been a member of that community for close to 5 years, and it's it's a different version of the same thing. It's a place where people are showing up on a daily basis, talking about what they're going through, sharing their good times, looking for help during their tough times. People show up celebrating their big milestones or their little milestones or any positive thing that they did. Like I would go to a Christmas party and I got through it sober. So I bookended that. I remember that. I bookended it. I would, before I went to the Christmas party, I posted in the groups, hey guys, I'm going to this party. I'm going to check in when I get home. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my accountability. And then like when I got home, I was like, I made it home. I'm still sober. And like everybody's like, hell yeah, like good job, nice work. You did it. Great job.
Yeah.
It's just people cheering for you because they get it. Um, yeah. And then
Yeah.
through that community, I started going to some in-person meetups. Um, started out with like a little hotel event in Dallas. I think I was 4 months sober, flew to Dallas. There's probably 30 people, spent the weekend in this residence inn near the Dallas airport, hanging out in the conference room. And we were doing silly stuff like painting coasters to look like recovery chips, these little black
Yes.
wooden coasters.
It's a great
We
idea.
we were playing horse. We borrowed a basketball from the front desk so we could play horse. And we're just like hanging out.
Yeah.
And we would talk about the weather. We would talk about how good our lunch was. We would talk about some childhood trauma, talk about how many times we've relapsed, talk about our favorite ice cream. Like we could just sift in and out. And that was the first time I realized what it's like to be able to be around people and in a real life face-to-face environment. Like I deserved, not deserve, I don't like that word.
Mhm.
Like it's okay for me to take up space.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm worthy of telling someone about my experience. And it's possible for me to listen to their experience and not try to figure out how it's about me. Like just to be able to be there for each other. Um, and I got hooked. I got hooked, man. I
Yeah.
love recovery people so hard.
Mhm.
Um, they just they mean the world to me. I like whenever I meet somebody who's in recovery, like I just strive to be like them because I
Mhm.
see so much beauty in people who are brave enough to look at something like addiction and just be like, I want more for this than myself, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I know how hard those hits are, whether it's relapse or just not being able to get traction or having to muddle through like the shit of our lives. Like sometimes we've caused a lot of damage and to have to face that, but to be able to see people do that so courageously and to be a part of their life, to be able to encourage them or to learn from them or to have them, like love on us when we're going through a hard time. The recovery people are the best people in the world. So, uh, yeah, the last 4.5 years, I mean, God willing, August will be 5 years, but the last 4.5 years, I've really dug in. I dug into the Cafe RE community. I would go to as many of these meetups as I could. And that's kind of how I weaseled my way into being a part of Recovery Elevator. I do like photography, and
No way.
I like making videos, and I'd text Paul or shoot him an email like, hey, I'm attending this event. Would you like me to take some photos for you? And he's like, at first he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, dude. And then I kind of
Yeah.
was like the unofficial picture guy
Yeah. Yeah.
at events. And then he'd see these videos where I'd make these video check-ins in the online group, and he's like, hey, have you ever edited like a YouTube video? Like, what if we made some YouTube videos together? What do you think? Do you want to try that? And then over the years, Paul's become a great friend and a mentor, and someone who's a great encourager of me along my journey. And now to be a part of the podcast and a leader in the community, it's a blessing. It's just beyond measure a blessing to contribute to something that has had such a massive impact, and not just my day to day, but the life that my kids are going to have, the life that my wife has. All those things are vastly different because so many people have been so selfless and shared their stories and supported me and encouraged me through the little things, you know?
Yeah. Man, incredible story, Kris. That's amazing.
That's a
Yeah,
lot of rambling.
dude, no, there was like zero rambling, in my opinion. That was just, that was very linear, and he hit a lot of very, very important, life altering parts. I want to, my heart goes out to you about your brother there. That's a massive, that's a massive loss. I have an older brother of my own. I couldn't imagine the same, very similar. I think there's so much of your story that's, going to resonate with different folks. The brother thing for sure. For me, it's, I think anybody that has like a sibling, there's that kind of not, I would say love hate, but there's love. And then there's like the conflict, and, when you're growing up together. Right. So my heart goes out to you on that. What a crazy cool story about, just with you and your wife have been together for how many years now then? I mean, on and off, including the 7 months of separation.
June 4th would have been 17 years.
17. Okay.
Yeah. And we were kind of married twice. We got married like legally 6 months before we had our wedding.
Gotcha.
So we've always kind of had a couple anniversaries, and that's why I've asked my wife every year since then. I'm like, well, do we just cancel that January anniversary since we had the separation? And she laughed. She's like, no, we celebrating both.
That's
she's
fun.
Like, now I think we have 3 because of our reconciliation.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. The trilogy. That's it. So, shout out to her for sure. I mean, that's obviously an amazing lady to stick by your side and wait for the real Kris to resurface and come back. So, one of the main parts that really stood out to your story that I want to, just kind of riff on a little bit is, man, isn't it crazy, the justifications? And I mean, Matt, you had some undeniable, life events and traumas. And like you say, this resume and this persona, this identity that you had, man, that must've been very challenging for you too. Like I do a lot of like, on my own self, like ego work, right? Ego is the reason for my relapses. I know that. So for you to have this, like all this external, bravado about you and this ego that you've built up, I'm imagining, right? And it's, that must've been very challenging for you. That's like, to get to that stage where you can just put that all aside and let the guard down. It must have been, especially with the military background. I can only imagine. And you did touch on it a little bit, but let's talk about a little bit more about the, those justifications and like ego and identity, if you will.
Yeah. I think we've all got something in society, and this is where society's jacked. Society's wrong. Like, I don't like to say things are right or wrong, but like society's got it wrong here. Like, I really do believe that they do, is that like we deserve, like I deserve this, I deserve, and like everybody on this planet has something. Like we're all going through something, and I just, it was 100% ego, and I still struggle. Like I'm not without ego today. I'm not, It's a work in progress,
Sure.
but you know, it serves its
Yeah.
purpose too, right? It
Of
does
course.
protect,
Yeah.
it does protect us.
Yeah.
But my alignment was so off that, um, you know, I thought, and again, like that's the only, like that's how I knew how to cope with stuff, was bury it, or there's this, you know, this coping mechanism of alcohol. And I would defend that like to my grave. Like I almost did defend it
Mm,
to my grave and almost to the end of a relationship. But yeah, it's that I think there's a lot of things that, you know, I don't know, it's that catch 22. Like, oh, if I could go back and change something, would I? Like, I don't know. Like, I went through what I went through. I can't spend too much time thinking about that because I get a little conflicted. But
mm,
I went through what I went through. But, um, you know, I'm grateful today that the pain that I put myself through, that I put my wife through, and that I put my children and other loved ones through, that it's not for nothing today.
mm.
And I'm glad that my wife, you know, whatever it was that she went through, that put her in that position to say no more, like to where she quit buying my bullshit. And she's like, you got to go. And it's not because she wasn't trying to teach me a lesson, it's because she loved me and she missed me, and she knew that she could feel it, like she wasn't safe, my kids weren't safe. And I mean, maybe she's a little crazy because she probably should have dipped out a couple years sooner, but God bless her for sticking around.
That's right.
That, you know, the timing was what it was, but it brought me to my knees. And that's, you know, I was talking to a buddy this morning, and he's like, sometimes God sends us messages, and my buddy said, he goes, sometimes he sends me this like soft, like gentle voice where God's talking to me. It's this soft, subtle voice. And other times it's a 2x4 across my face. And
Yeah.
like, it's more often than not that I feel like I got to get that chunk of wood slapped against me before I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, maybe I should do something about this.
Sure.
And it was, I mean, like there, man, it was, I remember the day we told our kids that we were getting divorced, and like that, it just guts me. I put those people through a lot of pain,
Mm,
but as a result of that, you know, it sucks that that's where it went to. I don't want to say that that's where it had to go, but that's where it went. And I can't change that fact now, but I can live to, you know, I can make up for it, that
right.
lifelong, you know, that living amends to my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at today, is like, what, you know, did this happen for nothing? No, I don't think so. We we've we've been given a gift of restoration of our family and our lives back. And I really believe that uh that we're using that for something, so that so that it wasn't just a couple crappy years. You know,
Right. Yeah.
maybe we can, you know, I mean, if there's one person that can hear my story or her story and use that to get out of where I was or
Mhm.
where they are, then, you know, then it wasn't for nothing.
100%. It's kind of like using it as like a blueprint. You know, you figure, okay, so this similar, similar life events have happened, and he did this, this, and this to get through it. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to start, as somebody that's like, doesn't know where to turn. There's so much helplessness, and it's, let's face it, when you're maxed out with stress and anxiety, you're not making the best decisions. So if there's somebody like you that can come on and say, this podcast worked for me, these support groups and all that, and they hear that and they turn that, absolutely, they're using your story as a blueprint to get them their own, so even though you're not seeing them in person, you're still giving them that handout and helping them up, which is just amazing. I love what you're saying about the recovery people too. There is just something so cool and so connected about talking to somebody that's like, there's a quote, I may have shared it on when we had our show, but it was something along the lines of like, when somebody's been confronted with their own death, they then learn how to live the most fulfilling life. The
Yeah.
most fulfilling lives coming out. I was like, yeah, for sure. There's something about that. Kris, a couple of quick other questions for you. A couple of things I wanted to touch on before I let you go. I do appreciate your time as well today.
Yeah.
You're talking, man, there's one of the things I really related to as well is like you mentioned, like the performative aspect of your youth specifically. And man, I can really relate to that. Just doing whatever it took to fit in, regardless if it's at your own expense and that sort of thing. How has that changed for you? And I guess fast forward even till now, like how has your identity changed, or how do you describe your identity now? Is this something that you have sort of a tangible or intangible description of yourself, or are you still kind of feeling it out? Like where are you feeling? And congrats on your upcoming, knock on wood, like you said, 5 years sober. There you go. Exactly. What is that transformation been as far as the performative aspect of yourself, the identity? And how close are you to like this true version of Kris over these last 5 years?
Well, just a quick thought on when I do look back on that younger version of me, it's really important. And if you're a listener and you're looking back on that, like, oh man, why was I like that? I look back on that guy with grace, that kid, that young man, that father, that I do my best to look back on that version of me with grace, because those things, it was survival for me in those moments. And I've got to be really careful to not be judgmental and be too hard on that guy, because he was making a lot of shitty choices, but he was doing his best.
Right.
But as far as like who I am now and who my identity is now, man, I do my best. This life, I believe, is not mine anymore. I still, again, like I still got ego. So it's still there. And I do shit to fulfill me all the time. One of my favorite verses from the Bible is, I believe, is John 3:30. And John the Baptist hears that Jesus is off baptizing people, and some of his followers are like, John, you're John the Baptist. And this guy, Jesus, is over there baptizing people. Like, what do we do? Are we going to stop him? This is your job. It's in your name. And he goes, no. He goes, he must become more, and I must become less. It's not about me. It's about him. And that really is where my life is today, or that's the goal, is living an act of service to try to connect people to a better life, to show them that there's a way to live for something that's bigger than me. And on a perfect day, and again, I'm no Zen master by any stretch of the imagination. I'm full on human being, but in a perfect day, like my goal is to wake up and to ask God, how can I serve you? How can I serve your people? And what can I do to make the experiences of the people that are around me today a little bit better than they were before they saw me? How can I show other people his love through me? Like that's the goal of who, and I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do it. But that's when I think of my identity, I got to be real careful that it's not about Kris, because that took me down a dark road before.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's almost like that's your North Star in a sense, is like, as long as you have that alignment and that connection with that, like that verbalization, I'm assuming that you're doing as well. And that's makes you feel like you're on the right path then.
Yeah. And making sure I got some people in my life to grab that 2x4 if I need to get,
Yeah. Gotta have that. Gotta have a 2x4 nearby within arm's reach, Yeah. And one final thought, I hope I can articulate this. It's a lot of work that I'm kind of doing personally. And I think some folks can relate to it. Just because you're mentioning is like, when you get to that stage where you are feeling, in service, and, there's these feelings of survival, and that's where you can kind of thrash around and the ego can kind of come in. But then there's the surrender, there's the allowing, and then there's the sort of that calming feeling. I've had glimpses of it before in my life, but I find that there's this duality, this yin yang of like that doer achiever, I have to force this, I have to control this in order to succeed, to feel good about myself, versus just gently, gracefully allowing something. And lo and behold, that generates just as much of quote unquote achievement and such. I hope I'm articulating okay. where was like, yeah, like you seem like a very chill dude just from what I've, talked to you before. So certainly you've had that shift. And what's kind of the advice that you can give for that? I guess, honestly, it seems like you more or less gave it in that last answer, but if you can just sort of rehash it a bit, like, yeah, what can you say about that as far as like, everybody's so wired to be these achievers versus just almost taking, it's like counterintuitive, doing the opposite energy.
Yeah, there's I drink 20 sparkling waters a day and I'm always burping. So sorry.
Yeah. Tremendous. Yeah.
I remember for a couple of years, I was hearing Paul and other people in Café RE talk about like, oh my gosh, it's Eckhart Tolle. And they would spit out this shit. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? What does any of this mean? And I just like, none of it ever, it took a long time for any of it to click with me.
Too
But
funny.
I don't even know if this is a Tolle story, but he talked about the world around us, and like the analogy was like you're a dog sitting in a ditch and all these thoughts and things that are coming into our mind are like cars driving by, and we can chase down every one of those. And I was very much that person where every thought that would come into my mind, whether it was an expectation of someone or a plan for the future or some sort of action that I needed to take, I would like, as that thought would come in, I was invested in it and I was running. And I was like just going crazy, chasing every car that would come by. And there's something about being able to slow down and to be that dog that sits in the ditch and watches the cars drive by and deciding, is this where I want to spend my time? And just having some mindfulness and that ability to stop, like to quit being so, I was very reactionary.
Yeah.
And I think mindfulness is, I mean, there's so many people that talk about it, but just being observational about how do I feel, what's happening with my body as I'm met with conflict or tension, or as I'm thinking about something, and being able to just stop and pull back and kind of be that observer. Like we are not, how does he say it? We are not our thoughts. We're the ones observing them.
Yes.
Like,
Okay. I've heard
I
that
heard
before.
that so many times. And I'm like, no, you stupid. Like I am my thoughts. What are you talking about? It took a long time for me to wrap my head around that, but just to releasing expectations and just know, like, it's real simple, not necessarily easy, but like when I can focus on like, what's the next right thing? And that's it. Like, that's what I'm responsible for. And just letting the rest of it go, releasing. It's counterintuitive to what society's telling us we need to push and we need to go and we need to perform and everybody needs to be giving 110% on everything you do. It's bullshit. I think it's bullshit for me because I will run myself ragged, and for what? We can't take anything with us, and this all ends in death. So
I
can't get bound up about that stuff. So I just try to, like, mindfulness has saved my ass and my marriage and my work relationships. And it's just that practice of stopping and slowing down, like as I get a little bound up about whatever it is, and releasing expectations, realizing the impermanence of everything, and just as long I can do my best, that's what I have.
Maybe count your teeth while you're at it. I'm going to try that, by the way. I like that. I've never heard that one before. I started doing it while you were talking. I don't know if you could see, I was kind of trying to keep it low key, but I was like, count my teeth. That's not a bad idea. And bubbly water all the way, man. I don't know if you get bubbly. There we go. Yes. Yeah. So cheers.
I got a whole mini fridge
full. There you go. Yeah. That's so funny, man. I got mini fridge downstairs full of kombucha and sparkly water. Let me tell you. Kris, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can folks find you? I'll have it in the show notes as well, but if they want to interact with you, where can they find you online?
You can check out the Recovery Elevator Instagram, at Recovery Elevator. We've got a website, recoveryelevator.com. We got a Facebook. If you want to look up me personally, I don't have, every once in a while I'll have some sobriety content, but at KrisOyen is my Instagram. Or if you have any questions or just want to talk, you can email me KRIS@recoveryelevator.com, Kris@recoveryelevator.com.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, man. And that's a very nice offer. That's cool throwing that out there. So I can't thank you enough, Kris. Thank you. Fantastic story. great storyteller. You can see why you're a host of such a wonderful podcast as well. I highly recommend everybody. I'll say, obviously, kind of borrowing from the format of Recovery Elevator. Recovery Elevator is the real deal. Check them out. And Kris, thank you so much for coming on the show today, my friend.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity, Matt. Glad to be here, brother.
Thanks.